Appreciate being on, and thanks everyone for taking some time out of your Friday evening to take part in this. Obviously, if you have any questions at any time, type them into the chat and we'll try and get to them. I'm going to start off with, I guess a few of the principles of practice design and seasonal planning and the importance of it, and then sort of show you how we utilize some of that stuff and how it applies at, with kids that are, 12, 13 years old, but also the same things that we do with players that are on our World Junior team, for example. And really the principles are the same. And so, we focus on the fundamental skills. When players have that fundamental skill component, it really sort of lends itself to everything else that they're going to do in the game. And so even with our highest performing players in Canada on the male side and on the female side, it really comes down to their ability to perform in the game. And a lot of it comes down to the technical skills, and it's stuff that they spent hours and hours practicing, a ton of repetition. And so those are some of the things that we're going to do here. So I'm just going to share my screen, and Gareth, just let me know if everything shows up fine here.
Yeah, that's it's coming in good.
Perfect. So to start, just a bit of an overview. We talked about a little bit of some association development and some things that I think associations can do to help get some consistency and standardization, some player development, practice planning, practice environment, some principles of learning. We'll get into some guidelines, some drill design, and then some player development, and we'll show you a few videos and some resources that we have for you as well. So I'm not going to go word for word on all the slides. I'll make sure this presentation is available to everyone at the end if you want to look at it and be able to share it with the coaches within your associations. But at the end of the day, planning is important, and at every level. And probably the coaches that get to the highest level spend the most time planning. And it's really about them being able to make sure they have a plan in place, so they're organized, so that they can review, see what they've done, see what they've taught, the ability to go back and utilize it at a later date, add progressions or regressions where they need to. But really it comes down to, as a coach, the planning component is really about the ability to effectively teach and develop the required skills that players in the game of hockey need. So to me, from a minor hockey association, there's two things that are really important to start off. Is number one, I think it's important to have consistency in the coaching philosophy, and having coaches being part of that philosophy, so that they feel like they had a say in how it was built and how it is put in place. And then number two, I think it's consistency in what coaches are teaching. We've all probably been in the situation where we get our team at the start of the year, and 2 or 3 practices in, we say to ourselves, wow, I can't believe what these kids can't do, or I can't believe what these kids don't know. And really that's where it comes down to. So I think at the start of the year or prior to the season, it's really important that the coaches within the association and the coaches within the specific age groups get together and say, here's some common strengths that we see, here's some common deficiencies that we see, and here's a core set of drills that we should all be doing that are going to work on skating and agility and puck handling and creativity and being dynamic and all those types of things. When you get to that point, you're going to see kids come through a minor hockey system that are more consistent in what they know. They're more consistent in what they've been taught, and therefore they're going to be more consistent in what they're able to do. So to me, from a success standpoint, it really comes down to 3 main things. Number one, the players have to enjoy coming to the rink every day. It has to be a destination. As coaches, it has to be something that we enjoy. Kids will read off that. If they feel like the coaches don't want to be there, then that's going to transfer to them. And number 2 is we want to see players developing of their skills, and players want to see themselves getting better too. And that's a key component of enjoyment. If we go to an analogy of something like a video game, players want to continually try and get to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. If they get to a point where they can't do it, where they can't pass a certain level, it becomes too difficult, or if it's too easy even, then it's not necessarily going to be fun. So we want to make sure that the players see themselves developing. And then we want to try and develop players to get to the next level. And that doesn't mean National Hockey League. It doesn't mean junior. That's great for the ones that get there. But it's more important about just making sure the kids are playing hockey the next year. And what we don't want to do is be a player's last coach. So of the utmost importance, it's really upon coaches to make sure the kids have a great experience, so that they want to play hockey again next year. And ultimately, if kids are still playing the game past their minor hockey age, they're playing, men's or women's recreational level hockey, then that's success in our mind. Ultimately, what we want to try and do is keep as many kids as possible playing at as high a level as possible for as long as possible. And that's the fundamental statement for long-term player development. If we reach those goals, then we're going to have success. And going back to what I said earlier about association being consistent, It's that standardized technical curriculum and methodology for instruction that's going to help to do that. We want to try and build that foundation. So all the boys and girls that play the game when they start when they're 5 and 6 years old, and they go through 9, 10, 11, 12, and on to 15, 16, 17, 18. If we've done that, then we're going to help them to reach their potential. And ultimately, that's where we want to get to. But at the end of the day, the development process sort of needs to be at the forefront. And it shouldn't be compromised to try and win games. It shouldn't be compromised to try and win tournaments. Those things are going to take care of themselves, and it really becomes a process. So to me, that process is really, really important. So everybody, even the players on the pathway to high performance, they need to continually perfect and advance those individual skills and tactics, because that's when those results are going to contribute to team success. Really, we're only as good as our weakest link. So our job as a coach is to make sure that we give all the kids the same opportunity to develop and contribute, and also at the same time understanding where those skills and tactics and how they're executed for efficient practicing. A quote from John Herdman, as the coach of our national men's soccer team, is, if you want more quality cream, you need more quality cows. And really, that's what our goal should be from the minor hockey level, is making sure kids get better, make sure they have fun, and ultimately that is going to result in more team success. So again, we should be putting that player development process at the forefront, and refuse to compromise about the importance of this. And I know that can be hard. You might start the season and you might lose 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 games in a row. But if you stick to your plan, things will come around. And for all the years that I've coached minor hockey, from kids that are 6, 7, 8 years old, all the way up until, even now coaching with a university team, it's really about the development process, and not being so worried about winning games in October or November, but what is our process to develop everyone so that we're actually playing at our best at the end of the year. And so again, we try to implement that standardized technical curriculum, standard drills, standard process on how we want to develop things, and really build that foundation. So as a coach, we need to identify those specific skills, understand how do we best develop these skills in players. Is it through small area games? Is it through stations? Is it through full ice drills? And again, depending on the ages that you're coaching, it's going to change all the time. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that identifying the specific skills in the drills and the practice plans that we put together. And then ultimately, it's about developing that productive yearly development plan. And for those of you that do it already, once you've done it once, you can go back to it and refer to it every single season. You can tweak it a little bit based on your situation. If you haven't done it, I know it might seem as a bit of a daunting process to start, but ultimately it will really, really help you. It'll save you time. It will help you keep on track with what you're trying to do. And when we look at hockey, it's really a fluid game. You could have the best laid plan in the world on paper, but you're always going to have to adjust it. And at the end of the day, what we want to try and do is make sure that we have a guideline in place. And when things are going well and we can move quickly through things, then that's fine. But if they're not going well, we have to regress and attack things again, then that's okay. And I think as a coach, having that plan in place and trying to stick to it and having that confidence, it's really, really important. I like to try and put my practices together in groups of 5 with a series of drills and skills that I put together. Some of them are repeated. We're not doing 200 different drills a year, but we're repeating some of the same drills, add some progressions to them. But at the end of the day, we want to try and get to the point where kids are in a situation that they're advancing all the time. And one of the key importance with practicing is trying to put things in there where kids learn to think. They analyze, they read, they react, and ultimately that's where they're going to start to see that transfer from practice to game. And obviously the game is a great opportunity itself in teaching and for players to be able to discover those types of things. But to younger kids, the game doesn't always have to be a full ice game 5-on-5. It can be small area, it can be modified. And for any of you that are watching NHL playoffs right now, so much of the game happens in a small area. So working on those small area skills is ultimately what's going to give you success in the game. And so it obviously gives you time to have more puck touches, to get more shots, to work on the small area skating, to work on the small area puck control. And those are things that happen more often in the game than the flow drills. And that's really where the success comes down to, is what can your players do in an individual situation. So again, practice time is precious. I know, a lot of times as coaches, we don't get as much practice time as we want. So when we're there, we need to make the most of it. And everything from planning our drills to the number of drills that we want to do in practice, how long we want to run them, how do we add progressions to it, and having that plan will make your practice much more efficient. The last thing kids want to do is come to the rink and stand around. The last thing that kids want to do is come to the rink and not be active. Really, hockey is meant to be a participation sport or a participation activity for kids, and not necessarily meant to be entertainment for parents. So we want to make sure that the player is at the forefront of what we're trying to do. So we're really trying to make sure that we're organized, players are active, and that they're getting a lot of repetition. To me, the practice environment is where the majority of the stuff is activated by the coach. To me, the practice is for the coaches, the games are for the players. But ultimately in practice, it comes down to being able to effectively teach and develop the skills required of the game, and to be able to plan those practice activities to enhance the learning opportunities for the kids. And we'll go through some of the processes that we like to follow as far as developing that stuff in our young players. So ultimately, the practice should be designed so that players can perform on demand. So no matter what situation arises in a game, they have the ability to make a decision, read and react at that specific moment. And again, for coaches, if we haven't seen the desired performance that we want in previous games, or even in practices leading up to those games, then really it should be no surprise that it's not probably going to happen in the game. And so to me, a lot of that leads back to what we're doing in practice. Is it game applicable? Is it developing situations where kids have to make a decision just like they would in a game? And we're doing patterns and we're doing activities that happen in a game. When we see those things all get tied together, we're going to start to see those desired performance components happen in a game. And again, it's that game transfer. Quote from Michael Jordan is, the minute you get away from the fundamentals, the bottom can fall out. They're really the basic principles that make anything work. And I don't care what you're doing or what you're trying to accomplish, you can't skip fundamentals if you want to be the best. And the best athletes are relentless on preparation. They're relentless on repetition of trying to work on those things. And it's the same thing with a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old. If we want them to be better skaters, we need to work on skating. If we want them to be better passers, we need to work on passing. And so some of the questions that I've mentioned is, we need to ask ourselves as coaches, is the skill or the drill realistic? Is it something that's going to happen in the game? Now, there's always going to be situations where you might be doing a skill that maybe isn't game application, but it's developing something. It could be developing athleticism, or it could be developing dexterity, different things like that. But ultimately, we want to try and ask ourselves, does it resemble a game situation? Does that drill or skill offer the opportunity for evaluation? Is it not just for development, but it's also to evaluate? So is the drill set up, or is the drill components comprised of things that we can look at and we can evaluate players? What are they doing well? What are they not doing well? But then also, can we use that drill for development? Is the skill of the drill self-motivating? Is it something that the kids like, that they have fun with? Is it they can see themselves trying to get better and better and better? And then obviously, do the players understand the objective? And that's a key component, is as a coach, when we're putting our drills together or our skills, that we can explain what is the objective of this, why are we trying to do it? And I think in today's world, kids more and more want to know why we're doing this. Is this going to make me better? Things like that, or questions that kids want to ask. We want to make sure that we can explain those types of things. Does the drill allow for progression and improvement? Does the skill relate to the game situation? Is there an opportunity for variations? Can you run drills from a similar setup, but maybe they have a little bit of a different twist to them? Has there been a suitable level of difficulty? Again, kids want to be challenged. Does the skill or drill offer opportunity for participation? Do we have everybody moving? Is there an offensive side to the drill, and is there a defensive side to the drill? And does the practice or the skill incorporate the factors of cooperation and competition? Hockey is obviously a team game, so a lot of the individual skills need to be done in repetition, but then we need to be able to progress those to a situation where kids are working in, as a twosome, as 3 kids, as 4 kids, as 5 kids, and be able to build that progression so that ultimately we can see all 5 players working together on the ice in a game situation. So I think it's important, from a principle of learning, is to focus on drills that are relevant in overcoming personal weaknesses. And it's not about trying to, sort of put kids out on a limb and say, you can't do this or you can't do that. But it's identifying the areas that they need to work on. So whether you're organizing your practices in stations, where you may put, kids of a similar skill set together so they can progress at the same time. I know that's oftentimes that's a challenge for coaches is, how do we group our kids in practice? And I think it's important that everybody does all the same things. So one of the things I like to do is if I'm working on a certain skill, I'll put the players that need more work in that skill in the same group, and that'll be the first station they go at. So we spend the most time there. Everybody will rotate through all the stations, but if you start the kids at the station where they need the most work, and you can spend more time at that, you can disguise some of the things that you're trying to do to improve some of those weaknesses. And it's not like your top 5 kids are doing something totally different than everyone else. It's important that they're all doing the same things, but it's also important that we give them the proper amount of time and put kids in groups of similar skills so they can progress at the same speed, learn at the same speed. And, as the season progresses, it doesn't mean they're always going to stay in those groups. Some kids are going to progress and be able to move on in other areas. Another thing I like to do is ask players for suggestions or drills or activities that they like to do. Kids like it when you ask them, hey, what drill would you guys like to do? And they'll name off this drill or that drill. And so again, it's important to get some feedback from players as again, they feel like they're part of the process. Another aspect when you're planning practices, I think, again, everywhere across Canada is going to be a little bit different. But if you have the opportunity, you are in a better situation if you can do 2 1-hour practices rather than 1 2-hour practice. Players learn better in shorter activities. You can run at a higher intensity level and they will retain it. And sort of the way I like to look at it is, if January 1st comes around, we make our New Year's resolution that we're going to go to the gym. If we went to the gym for 2 hours every Wednesday, we might see some minimal gains. But if we did something for half an hour, 4 times a week, we are going to see a lot more improvement. So again, trying to work on the same skills for a lot of repetition, for a lot of opportunity, and at a shorter period, for shorter lengths, we are going to see better improvement. So again, if you have the opportunity for practice options, try and schedule more shorter practices versus less longer practices. It's another thing that will help to improve on the development side. Another good quote is to practice as if you're the worst, but perform as if you are the best. So player confidence and making sure that players do things well and that they know they're doing well, they're going to have fun at it. So try and again develop confidence in your players by being prepared, being well organized. As I mentioned earlier, explain the rationale behind the drill so that they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. That'll go a long way as to them understanding how they can translate it into a game situation. I think it's also important to look at that learning takes place if success is possible, but not certain. So again, we don't want to make things so hard that kids are failing, but we also don't want to make it so easy that they're not challenged. And so being able to put kids in situations where, they're getting better, but it's not so easy that they're successful every single time. When there's that challenge there, they're going to see opportunities where they can get better. They're going to be able to see themselves getting better. They're going to be able to feel themselves getting better. And then obviously it's encouragement with kids is far better than the negative side of things. And it's okay to tell players, hey, you did a really good job there, except, if we try this next time, maybe this will work better for you. And every single player is going to learn different. Every single player is going to react different to the situation that they're in. So it's not necessarily a one size fits all. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we have those opportunities to get to know our players, understand them, and apply some different strategies with everybody. Again, from a principle of learning, tell me I'll forget, show me I might remember, but involve me and I'll understand. So again, having the kids be involved in the drills and being active and opportunities to participate are key. And I think improvement's going to be faster when players are given means to recognize their own progress. So a lot of times in games, I'm not barking orders at kids. I'm asking them questions. What did you see in this play? Or, what were you trying to do there? And over time, they get to understand that you're not asking a question because it's going to be a negative response. It's you just trying to figure things out and see how the player saw it. And to me, at the end of the day, if players are trying to make the right play, but they didn't execute, then that is perfectly fine. Those are things we want to encourage. Versus trying to just put them in a situation where they're just making the safe play. So, I kind of have 2 rules in games with players is 1, they can't dump it in, and 2, they can't dump it out. Now, inevitably, something's going to happen where maybe they've been on the ice for a while and they need to do a shift change, so they're going to dump the puck down and get off the ice. But I don't want that to be their strategy at a young level. I want them to try and make a play. And I don't want them to, in the defensive zone, if they get the puck, to just rim it around the boards and absolve themselves of some responsibility, but put it on someone else. I want them to try and make a play. And if they make mistakes trying to make a play, then that's fine. And again, that's something that you can really work on in practice. And I think the other thing that's important is try not to compare players with teammates. Everybody's different. Every team, and it doesn't matter if it's a women's Olympic team, if it's an NHL team, you're going to have your Connor McDavids of the world, and you're going to have maybe your fourth line player that doesn't play as much at that level. But we don't want to compare players to other players on the team. We wanted to compare them to their past performances and try and encourage them to improve future performances. So when it comes to learning, I think there's a few key things that we need to look at as a coach. Number one, I think we need to try, especially early in the season, is identify strengths and weaknesses from a skill standpoint, and really look at it from a team component. So where is our team at? Are we quick? Are we fast? Are we a puck possession team? Are we not? Can we pass the puck? Can we not? Or, from a team standpoint, it's important to look at where you're at. And then from there, you want to look at the individual players and look at, what do we need to improve? Do we need to improve the foot speed of our defensemen, or do we need to work on the deception and creativity of the forwards? If we can identify some of those elements, it's going to help us in planning our practice to identify what we need to do. And you're not going to improve the foot speed of defensemen in 1 hour. You're not going to improve the foot speed of your defensemen hardly in a week or even in a month. Same thing with deception and creativity. Those are things that we need to go back to. We need to repeat it over and over and over. So I think as a coach, we need to be able to understand the qualities or the skills that are required for players at a skill performance. And a lot of times I'll look at even high performance levels of the game. And even though kids might be 10 or 11, 12, it gives us a good opportunity to see where they need to get to. And a lot of kids are self-motivated. They will want to improve. They'll watch highlights. They'll go on YouTube. They'll go on social media, and they'll look at plays that happen and try and figure out how do I do that? How do I do these things? How do I emulate what I see on TV or in games, and how do I copy that? So take advantage of some of those elements. It's important to understand how to improve individual player skills, how to comprehend the techniques and application. And a lot of times it's not about biomechanical principles or getting really technical. It's just providing kids a situation where you set up a scenario and now they have to perform it. And a lot of times they're going to figure it out. And so we want to make sure that we're using drills that are going to improve skills that are ultimately integrated into your individual and your team tactics, so that they see the progression. We're doing this drill because this is going to help us in this situation in a game. And that's where they'll start to make that connection and the transfer. So to me, again, I at the start of the year, I really like to look at an overall assessment of the team. Then I looked at the overall assessment of position specific. So assessment of our forwards, assessment of our defensemen, assessment of our goaltenders, and then get down into the individual players. And then if we can select that course of action or plan of action that's going to help us to fulfill those objectives of improving, we have a good sense of what we need to be able to do. So to me, the three main sort of practice principles is number one, start your practices off with skill. Players learn best when they're fresh, so that first 15 to 20 minutes is really when you want to try and introduce some new concepts, introduce things that create situations where the kids have to be dynamic. Those are the best opportunities in your practices to try and develop that. Obviously, small area games and kids learning how to compete, a lot of times those are best done at the end of practice. They're a little bit tired. They've been on the ice for a while, so raising that intensity level and competition level at the end of practice can really enhance what you're trying to do. The other thing is, I think, especially with younger players, 50 to 70 minutes is sort of the limit for players to maintain that high level of interest. We even see with, some of our high performance athletes that, a 45-minute session or a 60-minute session is where we get the most out of them. If you're having an hour and a half or a 90-minute or even a 2-hour practice, it can drag on. Even if you are running activities where the guys are going or the girls are going a lot and they're staying busy and things like that, over that length of time, the interest and the things sort of start to wane. So again, try and get a read on the age group of the boys and girls that you're coaching, and then figure out, okay, what is the ultimate or the optimal situation here for us to be able to perform. I think it's important to, again, plan your practices, record them. If you're using, electronics, whether using apps or drill drawing software, it helps. Again, it takes a little bit more time initially to put those in place, but I think the kids know when you come to practice, if you're not prepared and you're just sort of throwing things together by the seat of your pants. Again, make sure that it has your key teaching points, and it's just as important for you as it is for your assistant coaches, so that you're all on the same page. Again, your practices will be more efficient. You're not wasting time talking at the board. You're not wasting time trying to set things up. Put some measurable outcomes in place. Identify what you want to cover off in the practice. And again, when I put my practices together in groups of 5, we kind of have some bullet points that I like to look at and say, these are what we want to accomplish. And over the course of 5 practices, some of them are going to get met and some of them aren't. And that means we can progress in some areas or move on. In other areas, we need to go back and redo it and do it again. But again, there's nothing wrong with having to adapt your plan. And, a lot of times at the end of the practice, we'll just ask the coaches, that we're on the ice with, a simple question, what did we get better at today? And sometimes you're going to say, well, we got better at this, we got better at that. Other times you're going to say, you know what, we didn't get better at anything. And that's okay. But at least you're having some sort of evaluation piece to see how practice did. Did the kids have fun? Were they active? Did we accomplish the goals that we want to set out? And all those things are elements that are going to make you more prepared and better off as a coach. We want to make sure that our drills are active. We want to look at practices that contain, probably 5 different activities. So warm up elements where we really want to teach. There's going to be some technical skill drills that are done under game-like conditions. We want to make sure that there's a fun element in there. And then something that's a competitive activity or cool down, like a small area game at the end. And again, depending on the age level and the caliber that you're coaching, you're going to be able to play with that. But if you have a plan in place, your practice is organized, and ultimately you're going to see more improvement that way. I think it's important that all the coaches on the ice are on the same page. So whether it's your support staff, your assistant coaches, parents, anyone who's volunteering, is make sure that they have responsibilities so that they're activated as well. And so they're not just, someone who's leaning on the boards and as everything's going and you're putting all that, the onus on the lead on ice person or the head coach. We want to make sure the coaches are engaged in drills. And I'll show you a little bit later on some of the things that we do where you can really get the coaches engaged. So whether it's coaches start in the corner and the players have to start the drill with puck steal. So they have to lift the coach's stick and steal the puck, something that happens a lot in games. Or the coaches are the ones that are applying pressure. I love being able to apply stress or pressure in drills because it emulates a game situation. And so it's a good opportunity to make sure that the coaches are paying attention, that they're involved as well. If you're at the coaching at the age where you're drawing on the coach board, and again, we try to emphasize that, we want to spend as little time at the board as possible, but there are going to be times when you have to do it that try and draw your drills in a way that the players can see them. Not everyone will understand by looking at a drawing, so being able to describe the drill as well. Some of them aren't going to get it either way, so it's really about a good demonstration that you're going to do when you start to drill. So think about how all the different ways that the kids and people learn. So again, try and be clear. Sometimes I've seen coaches on the Coachmate board and they're drawing away, and by the end of it, there's lines all over it and you can't make sense of it. And definitely the kids can't. They'll look at it and then they'll nod their head and say, you guys understand? They'll say yes, but they really don't. So, again, try to incorporate some of the details of drills. And a lot of times even in drills, we'll talk about, forwards are going to do this and defensemen are going to do this, but don't forget about the goaltenders. Even if you tell them, goaltenders, your job here is to, battle for rebounds, or your job here is to try and deflect the puck into the corner so they're not coming out to the net. So just something simple, but anything you can do to make sure that everyone understands what their focus in the drill is going to help. If you have the opportunity, try and name your drills. You can call it, the Halifax this, or the Nova Scotia that, or the Manitoba, whatever. And then, over time, you'll be able to get to a situation where, you don't have to spend any time at the board. You can just call out the name of the drill. So you're going to call the warm-up drill, this drill or that drill. And yes, you can still add progressions on it, but as soon as you name the drill and you've done your repetition and you add progressions on it, the players know where to go, the coaches know where to go. Will be much more efficient in what you're trying to do from that standpoint. And again, I think the drills need to be able to progress and complement each other over the course of a practice and a season. So it's important that we really go from A to B to C to D. And a lot of times we'll have coaches that'll go straight to a breakout, or they'll go straight to a forecheck. But really your forecheck is only going to be successful if the kids can skate, if they can angle, and they know how to use their stick. So start with the simple. Even if your players are fairly good at it and you don't have to spend a lot of time on it, going back to the fundamentals, like we saw in the Jordan quote, is really, really important. And ultimately, again, the purpose of the drill. Let the players know why we're doing this. And it could be, something from your last game where you said, you know what, we really struggle in our game, so that's why we're going to do this drill. Or it could be something like, we really had success in this aspect of our last game. We want to try and build on that. We want to try and continually improve. So that focus of the drill is important as well. So this chart is essentially where we're trying to get to. And the top right-hand corner is ideal, something where there's high repetition and it simulates a game. In the bottom left-hand corner, something that is non-game-like and low reps is probably the thing that players will get the least amount out of. So there's always, like I said, there's always going to be those situations where we have a situation where there's, it might be a game simulated drill, but there's low repetition, or there might be another situation where there's high repetition, but it's non-game like. But we want to try and limit those. We really want to try and maximize elements in practice where there's high repetition and it simulates a game situation. So from a player development standpoint, one of the things that we want to look at is, again, it's sometimes it can seem overwhelming or daunting at the start of the year, but if you're committed to it and you have the courage to follow through, I think you're going to get to that point where you want to get to. So it's really about sort of the development plan, skill improvement. What are the drills that you're going to do? Observation, watch them. I'm not a person who subscribes to stopping a drill every 5 seconds or stopping kids every 5 seconds and giving them instruction. Let them work through things, and you'll have that opportunity to observe and see where the challenges are. Putting them together in sequences or progressions, and then what are the teaching progressions that you're going to follow, so that you can be able to see that improvement from those areas. So, as a coach, it's important to understand where they're at in their skill development, where they need to get to. So if they're 10 years old, putting together your yearly plan or your monthly plans, so the players are on that pathway to identify, where are they going to need, what do they need to know for next year? Or what do they need to know for the second half of the season? Or what do they need to know for next month? Or even in some cases for the next practice? What is the skill development that's required? What is the tactical development? How do we teach? How do we instruct? What is the teaching process that we use? And then what elements of game or team play consists of these different elements? So again, I think once you as a coaching staff understand what your players need to work on and what he or she needs to include in those drills, then you can really focus on the repetition and the specificity of what you're trying to accomplish. So to me, again, the drills are really only effective if they're executed properly. And that doesn't mean that it's mastery. That doesn't mean that it's perfect every time, but we want players to be accomplishing the things that we want to accomplish and perform the things that we want them to perform. So even as a coach or an instructor, we want to try and execute those drills, observe the players as they do the drill, and correct technique. Repetition is the key. And I will always let players go through a repetition and drill 2 or 3 times before I'll ever stop it, because I want to get a good sense of what is the challenge. Is it that they don't understand? Is it a lack of skill? You'll be able to observe and figure out where are the challenges. So, essentially, if you look at another activity, whether it's music or swimming, kids don't go into a race the first time you take them to swimming lessons. They're starting the shallow end and they learn fundamentals. When kids are first starting to play an instrument, again, it comes down to learning the fundamentals before they actually start to learn to play songs. So it's no different with kids in hockey. We want to be able to master individual skills before we go to tactics and systems. We don't want to get necessarily forward specific or D specific until they have the fundamentals. And then you can start to say, this is a defenseman specific drill, or this is a forward specific drill. Everyone should be doing everything at a young age. I'm a big proponent of kids playing different positions. So there's a lot of stuff to teach. And ultimately we have that limited practice time, as I mentioned earlier. So we want to be organized. So when it comes to the teaching element, there's kind of a 5-step process that I like to follow. First is technique. Yes, the kids need to understand how to do something and practice it, but we don't have to get deep into the biomechanics. The second component is practice or repetition. We need to make sure that they have enough time to do that. The third element is really, really important, and we call it figure it out, is we need to allow kids to figure things out. We can't be telling them what to do every step of the way. We might have a drill that we think, wow, this is a really creative drill. But if we spend our whole time telling the kids to turn left or turn right, it's not really creative anymore. So I always like to finish whatever drill I'm doing or whatever skill I'm doing. The last part that I leave the players with is that figure it out. So they get to determine, they can turn left, they can turn right, they can make a read, they can react to different things, so that it's not me telling them what to do. The next step is you want to sort of practice with purpose and speed. And ultimately that's where we start to have repetition, and the players are starting to see success. So now we can worry more about the exact purpose of the drill and the speed that we're trying to accomplish. And then ultimately it comes down to game application, is how are we looking at players in practice, and do we think that they're going to be able to apply this to a game situation? So from a technique standpoint, again, it comes down to not only teaching for technique, but also for results. So are they performing the skill? Are they performing a drill where we're seeing success? The repetition helps them to become consistent. And once they get to that point, now we're going to start to lead to a situation where those things can be incorporated into the games. The repetition is important, that we really start from the beginning. So again, if you can't do it standing still, you probably can't do it moving, and you probably can't do it to beat an opponent. We also want to work on the same skills in a variety of drills. You know, like I said earlier, we don't want to do 200 drills a year, but we also don't want to do 10. So we want to have certain drills that are focused on certain elements, but it's okay to use a variety of drills that incorporate the same thing, so the players aren't getting bored, or they're not feel like they're doing the same thing over and over. And then ultimately they need to start at a speed where they can practice and think and create and not be worried about making mistakes. Once they get better and then become more consistent, then we can start to add speed to it and some of those different elements. So it's important to look at those things. To me, the figure out is creativity and improvisation. Really, that's what the game is all about. We don't want kids to be worried about making a mistake. If they're worried about the outcome, then they're not really going to reach their potential. If they're worried about losing the puck, or they're worried about falling down, they're probably not going to go as fast as they can or as fast as they could. So sometimes we just need to set the drill up and then let the players decide the pattern. Practicing with purpose and speed is ultimately where we want to get to. We want to try and practice. We play. We've all heard that saying before, but the more we can do in practices to enhance the speed, so that we're practicing at the same speed in which we play, we're going to see that again translate more into the games. And so, you know, in a lot of situations we have danglers or pylons or stick handling devices on the ice. And those are great opportunity at the beginning stages to teach and learn, but those things aren't on the ice in a game. So at some point we need to take those away. So when you feel like your players are good enough, then use coaches as the obstacle. And now the coach can have an active stick and they can provide some different stresses or pressure, or use different players, or build it into a situation where there's stress and there's pressure added, because that's what happens in a game. So if they're used to that in practice, they're going to start to see that translate again into better performance in a game. And then lastly is sort of game application, is trying to tie things into a situation where you're doing your drills, you're doing your patterns that are similar to what they see in games. And that's when they're going to start to recognize this situation in the game. Okay, we've done this in practice this week or last week. We understand that we see some familiarity. They're going to have a better idea of what to do, and they're going to be able to start to make better decisions and quicker decisions. So again, in a lot of situations, it's important that we add that figure it out element, and then we add the pressure or the stress, whether it's puck protection or whatever, because now those are game-like situations, and the better they get to get at it in practice, the better they're going to be at it in games. So sort of some definitions here that we look at from a progression is really the same drill. So it's the same setup, and now you add components. So it might start off where it's skating, there's no pucks, then you're going to add a puck to it. Maybe you're going to add a pass. You might add additional players, and then you might add stress or pressure. So that can all be done in one drill. And that's really what a progression is. When we talk about a skill blend, the skill blend is looking at a series of skills needed to perform a drill or a play. So here's a certain, might be multiple skating skills, might be multiple puck control, it might be moves, and it might be a shot. So we're blending different skills together is sort of the terminology we use from a skill blend. So if we start with progressions, then we can start to blend skills together. Ultimately, where we want to get to is a continuum of where it's a series of skills or activities that will lead to something that happens in a game. So it might start with picking up a loose puck. Then what is the skating element that's applied to that? What is the puck control or the puck protection element? Maybe there's change of direction, or maybe there's a drive of lane. So there's a lot of different elements in a continuum, but at any one point, all those things have to be done in coordination in order for the game situation or the play to be able to be put together. And then lastly, we look at it as a chain of events, and a chain of events is really about the series of plays or series of skills or series of activities that happen in any game situation. So again, it could be passing and receiving, it could be a skating pattern, it could be a move, it could be puck protection, it could be a scoring chance. And this is where the evaluation part comes in. And at any one point, if those are 5 links in the chain, if our players can't do something in one of those situations, then it comes down to a situation where we have to be able to review, and we have to be able to look at the opportunity to say, was it the pass or the pass reception that broke this play down? Was it the skating pattern? Was it a lack of moves or deception? Was it a lack of puck protection? Was it a lack of scoring chances? Those are the different things that we have to look at. And at any one point, we're able to evaluate why this play didn't happen in a game is because something along that chain of events and it becomes broken. So now it comes down to how do we identify those different links? So when I look at it, I think, again, we look at A is really putting together what are the skating skills that are required. So it could be warm up with puck control. And here's just a sample of a video of players getting repetition on different puck control moves. And again, the repetition helps them to become proficient at it so that, again, they're going to be able to do some of these things in a game. This is a stick handling where it's sort of fast hands, toes up. If anyone saw McKinnon's goal the other night, the very last play before we scored on that end-to-end rush, it was exactly this. He had fast hands. He moved the puck from his forehand to his backhand. He lifted his toe up in that situation on a game. So again, trying to pick skills and elements like that you can put together where players are going to be able to perform on demand, whatever it is, so that they have to have the confidence and the repetition to be able to do this type of stuff before they go to the next level. So this is an example of skills that you want to do in the warm-up, so kids are getting a lot of repetition at it. From a technical skill standpoint, it might be a little bit more structured, where you're working on specific things. But again, you see some of the boys and girls in this drill, very simple pattern. There's lots of kids that are moving. You can work on specific things. It could be puck protection. It could be attacking a triangle, all kinds of different elements. But we want that repetition so that when situations arise in a game, they don't have to think about it. They can just do it. From a tactical standpoint, we're working on skating skills already. We've done puck control skills. Now we're working on how do we tie this into a net drive or an entry. And so it's utilizing the same type of skills, but now we've just added that game-like situation. So now we're simulating an entry coming across the blue line. And again, this can be done with any level of player. So these are the types of things that we want to be able to progress to. So start simple with the skill, mix some of the skating and puck skills together, and then work it into a situation where they're going to have to put these together in a situation where it's going to happen potentially in a game. From there, it's a lot easier to be able to progress into team tactics. So a team tactic is 2 or more players working together. So here's, again, a breakout component where there's pressure. So the defenseman has to learn how to retrieve the puck. There's going to be pressure on him. The forward's trying to get it back. So these are, again, elements where you can look at turning individual skills into one-on-one situations. And now they're going to simulate some game type situations. So again, not a forecheck or a puck is in the corner. You want to be able to get it. So there's elements of compete here. There's elements of competition, but the same puck handling skills for a forward, and again, you're looking at trying to develop some habits. So shoulder check, puck protection, different things like that. They're all elements that come into play. The next thing that's important is trying to incorporate it into a game situation. So some small area games where you can tie that stuff into the practice that you're trying to do. And again, players like the small area games, and you can, as a coach, you can add lots of different rules. Turn it from a 1-on-1 into a 2-on-2. You can add it into a 3-on-3, and ultimately you're going to get to a point where it's all, almost a 5-on-5 or a game like situation. So again, all these things build from individual, simple to more complex to team type components in it. Another way to make your practices more efficient is to incorporate different ways of starting a drill. So you don't always have to work on a drill just going to work on a crossover start or a front start. I like to start a lot of my drills off similar to what's going to happen in a face-off. There's 30, 40, 50 face-offs in the game, and there's an individual skill that's going to be applied to all of them. So it's an opportunity to work on skills within a drill on how do you start it. So you can work on acceleration, you can work on stick fakes, different things like that. So again, developing habits of the shoulder check or picking pucks up off of walls, those are all elements that you can add to the start of your drill that will make your practice more efficient. So as you build on it, you'll have the opportunity to work on some of these types of things. So again, I'd encourage coaches to be creative and think of, instead of starting our drill with players always in the corner, why don't we start it just like they would be on a face-off alignment? And again, so, example, this might be a net drive drill. Well, instead of starting with a player out of the corner, they have to go get a loose puck and change the scenario. So it could be in the corner, it could be a face-off or a puck that's one to the net, it could be to the wall. So there's lots of different elements where the players have to react to something, and then you can still finish the drill off in the same way that you wanted to. So again, we're blending lots of different elements here, and it's important to try and be creative a little bit with how you start your drills. And again, you can turn them into competitive situations from 1-on-1 into 2-on-2s and elements like that. So again, these are all things that happen in games, but if you practice this way, you're going to see your players are more efficient at those types of things in games. So trying to relate this to sort of what we do from a high performance side, even with our World Junior players, we like to start simple. Then we'll add stress and then try and turn it into a game situation. So, and again, just to try and emphasize that we really do a lot of simple and basic things with high performance athletes. Obviously their execution is going to be better than younger players, but the process is very, very similar. So, retrieving a puck, that was dumped down the ice, the habits that we need here, the shoulder check, the fake with the stick, these are things that we still work on with elite players, and these are things that kids at a young level should be taught. And then we want to be able to add some stress to it so they don't forget about the stick fake or the shoulder check, now just because there's someone chasing them. And these are elements that we work on with the elite players all the time, because they're the things that they have to be able to repeatedly do in a game situation. So again, with young players, it's important to start with these types of things that are game relatable. They're simple. And then from there, if you look at how you can tie some of the individual things into a team type of drill, where this one's going to start down low, there's a bit of a cycle. It still comes down with the player's individual ability to pass or shoot. A shot from a defenseman, and now they got to go back and retrieve a puck in the neutral zone. And now they're going to have pressure on. So they're not going to be able to progress to this type of drill if they can't do each of the components individually. And so again, just to show, how we take something very, very simple and tie it to a game situation. And then, here's one with the defenseman in the game where they had to do a shoulder check. They did a stick fake, and now they're able to get the puck coming out of the zone. So again, the ability to tie these things together is really, really important in practice planning. The other element too is just to be able to add complexity to it. It's something that players like. They want to be able to advance things, and so you might just be starting with a very simple component of a shoulder check, and then you want to add some complexity to it and a game sort of situation. It's important that, again, we work on skills that happen in games often. So again, it happens a lot where you're coming back into your zone and you have to pick up a loose puck, and then you have to try and get it out of your zone. So work on drills in situations where, again, you're developing habits and they're patterns or things that are going to happen often. And so again, just starting something simple, and you can see here we're really focusing on that shoulder check and the ability to scan and their vision up the ice. And again, this is all something that is basic, but we have to, the only way we're going to develop those habits is to really be able to do that into individual skill component. Again, here, game situation, player was able to scan, look up the ice, understand what their next play is going to be, and be able to make a play to get the puck going up the ice. So again, it's not rocket science. It's just sort of having a plan on what we're trying to do as we put this stuff together. So, another thing is it's important is to use realistic patterns and try and set up your drills in the same area of ice that would happen in a game. So if we're looking at retrievals for defensemen, a lot of times it might be in the middle of the ice. It might be more along the boards, and then set up the pattern, again, for players coming out of the zone, just as they would in a game. So a lot of times, we have really good drills, but they're not necessarily set up in a situation that would actually happen on the ice. So if you want to see that translation into the game component, then it's important to practice this and work on that type of thing in the practices as well. And then again, you see in a game situation, player comes back into the zone, they get the puck, and now they have to look up ice, they're skating and they're getting it out. So try and recognize patterns you see in games, whether it's NHL, whether it's junior, whether it's higher levels of the female game or the women's game. Those are all elements that are gonna help. So and then the ability to add complexity to it. Once you see the players are good, then add some complexity. This is fairly simple to start. An escape move, players are underhandling the puck. That in itself is making it more complex, where they're not over stick handling. And now you can see you can add some change of direction. And as we progress here, this is where we sort of talked about earlier about the importance of adding some of these things to your practices and make it more challenging. And players love working on this individual skill. They love it when they can get to a situation where they can pick some of this stuff up and be able to apply it into some game situations. So it's important that, again, we could find game situations all day long where some of these things happen, some of these little things, but I like to try and work on the things that are repeatable, things that happen often in the games, and that's where you're going to get the best bang for your buck. So sort of as we finish off here, the yearly plan is important. Get that plan in place for your forwards, get that plan in place for your defensemen and your goaltenders. Design your warm-ups that are skill specific. If you're doing puck protection, for example, that day, work on some puck protection type of warm-up drills. If you're working on passing, whatever it is, and have that plan in place where you're going to teach, you're going to give the players time to practice it. You have the opportunity to give feedback and repeat. And again, I think it's all important. And I really encourage coaches to sort of record what you do. And by having that yearly plan, the monthly plan, your practice plans, and be able to record what you're doing, you're going to have something to fall back on. So a sample of a yearly plan that we do on a month-by-month basis at the different age groups that we have available is a simple way for a coach to sort of look at things and identify, in September, what are the skating skills I want to work on? What are the puck control? What are the shooting? What are the passing? And you have the opportunity to almost just put a check mark on it when you're done and say, yeah, we covered this, we covered this, we covered this. And you might be 3 weeks in and say, you know what, we haven't done this yet. We need to go back and revisit it. So once you put this together once, it becomes a template that you can use year after year after year. And you don't have to necessarily put a whole yearly plan together at the same time. But I think if you do it month by month, you'll look at your schedule and say, okay, well, this month we have 12 practices and 4 games. Now you can start to identify, here's what we want to do in these practices. You might have another month where you have 8 games and 8 practices. So again, depending on where you're at, you have the ability to tweak it from year to year, but it's important to kind of get that plan in place and identify from there. To me, the other really important thing, as I mentioned, is assessment. At the start of the year, you want to be doing a bunch of different skills and really identify where your players' strengths and weaknesses are. And again, I like to do drills that you can do to evaluate, but they're also drills that you can utilize to develop and evaluate where you're at. Every single drill, you're going to find something that the different players are good at and other players maybe struggle at. But I think you need to know where you're at before you can identify where you're going. And we have some different evaluation tools that coaches can utilize, and I'll pass these along too, where you can look at sort of some player assessment components for forward skating. It might just be, you know what, we want to look at how's our mobility, how's our agility, how's our small space skating, how's our speed, how is our quickness, how's our acceleration or our speed change. And in a form like this, you can put all the players' names in there and you can give them a score. So, you know, I can put in here, I could put in this player's a 1 in this one, they're a 3 here, they're a 4 there. Maybe the next player is a 2, the next player is a 1, and the next player is a 3. So, and it will automatically rank and kind of give you an assessment of where you're at. So again, if you have coaching staff or you have parents or assistant coaches who have been involved in the game, this would be a simple thing to look at. And maybe you do this, you know, in the first couple of weeks, and I identify the forward skating, backward skating, puck control types of elements that you have, and provide a score for the players. What it does is, you know, then they have an individual, and then you can do this evaluation again, maybe at Christmas time, and maybe you can do it again at the end of the year, and really sort of track how much our players are improved. So I think that's an important component that you can utilize. And so again, I'll make sure I pass this on to everyone if it's anything that you're interested in utilizing. And again, I think the assessment is so important at the start of the year to get a sense of where you're at, so you know where you need to go. And then lastly, again, I think, you know what, we need to make sure that it's fun. So the skills and the tactics are all part of it. It's part of our teaching process, but really the game teaches so much more. We've all are aware of the life skills and those types of things to it. But at the end of the day, it needs to be a good place for kids to be. So just finishing off a little video from Todd and Colin.
Are there, you know, minor levels.
So just you know, a little bit of a message there. So Gareth, that's I think we're just around time here. So I think you know, if there's any questions, happy to ask any. At the same time, I can provide my email address at the end if you want to pass it on. Anyone have any specific questions, we can do that, and I'll make sure you guys get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation with videos, and they can be utilized that way as well. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I know Tim Boyce with the Hawks. He's one of the technical directors helping to set this this little conference up. I know he's been I think collecting some of those presentations. So yeah, if you want to send that on, that would be awesome, Corey, and we can definitely make sure everybody who has signed up for this gets it. We're going to be sending out I guess links to the presentation as well, but I think that would be super helpful. No, again, just to stay on time, we'll keep on. We'll move on to Andrew here in just a minute. But again, on behalf of the organizers here, Corey, that was fantastic. Just so much helpful information there, and I know everyone will appreciate getting a copy of that presentation. So big thanks again here for making time for us tonight.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks everybody again for attending, and enjoy the rest of the presentations.